Imagine this. You're rushing through a crowded airport, late for your flight, your mind buzzing with 100 different thoughts. You grab what you think is your suitcase from the baggage claim, only to realize hours later that it's not yours. But here's the twist. What if that simple mistake changed your life forever? What if that suitcase belonged to someone who would turn your world upside down in ways you never saw coming? That's exactly what happened to Emma, a young woman whose ordinary life took an extraordinary turn because of one innocent mix-up. But this isn't just a story about a suitcase. It's a story about fate, secrets, and a love that defies all odds. And by the end of this video, you'll get the answers you've been searching for, answers that will leave you breathless and wanting more. Now, let's talk about you for a second. Yes, you. Why are you here? Maybe you're a hopeless romantic, someone who believes in the magic of unexpected connections. Or maybe you're just curious, drawn in by the mystery of how a simple mistake could lead to something so life-changing. Whatever the reason, I'm glad you're here because this story is for you. It's for anyone who's ever wondered what it would be like to have their life transformed in an instant. And trust me, by the time we're done, you'll be hooked. So, grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into a tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last second. Emma was just an ordinary girl living an ordinary life. She worked a 9-to-5 job, spent her weekends binge-watching her favorite shows, and dreamed of a life that felt a little less mundane. But all of that changed the day she accidentally picked up the wrong suitcase at the airport. At first, she didn't think much of it. It looked just like hers, black, sleek, and unassuming. But when she got home and opened it, she realized her mistake. Instead of her clothes and toiletries, she found designer suits, expensive watches, and a leather-bound journal filled with cryptic notes. Who did this suitcase belong to? And what secrets were hidden within its contents? Enter Alexander Grant, the enigmatic billionaire who owned the suitcase. Alexander was a man who lived in a world of luxury and power, but beneath his polished exterior lay a heart burdened by loneliness and a past he couldn't escape. When he discovered that his suitcase was missing, he wasn't just annoyed, he was terrified. Because that suitcase held more than just his belongings. It held a secret that could destroy everything he'd built. And now, it was in the hands of a complete stranger. As Emma and Alexander's paths crossed, they found themselves drawn to each other in ways they couldn't explain. But their connection wasn't just about the suitcase or the secrets it held. It was about two people who, despite their differences, understood each other in a way no one else could. Emma saw through Alexander's tough exterior to the vulnerable man beneath, while Alexander admired Emma's authenticity and strength. But as their feelings deepened, so did the danger surrounding them. Because the suitcase wasn't just a random mix-up, it was the key to a mystery that would force them to confront their pasts and fight for their future. So, what happens next? What secrets does the suitcase hold, and how will they change Emma and Alexander's lives? Will their love survive the challenges ahead, or will the weight of the truth tear them apart? These are the questions that will keep you glued to this story. And I promise you, the answers will shock you. But here's the thing, this isn't just their story. It's yours too. Because as you watch their journey unfold, you'll find yourself asking, what would I do in their shoes? How far would I go for love? And what secrets am I hiding in my own life? By now, you're probably wondering how this all ends. But here's the master move I'm not going to tell you. Not yet. Because this story is too good to rush. It's a roller coaster of emotions, a whirlwind of twists and turns that will leave you breathless. And just when you think you've figured it out, something will happen that will completely change the game. So if you're ready to uncover the truth, to experience a love story like no other, then keep watching. Because this is just the beginning, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. But before we go any further, let me ask you this. Have you ever made a mistake that changed your life? Maybe it was something small, like taking the wrong turn on a road trip, or something big, like saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Whatever it was, you know what it feels like to have your world turned upside down in an instant. That's what makes Emma's story so relatable. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest moments in life come from the smallest mistakes. And as you watch her journey unfold, you'll find yourself rooting for her, hoping that she gets the happy ending she deserves. So, what are you waiting for? The answers are just a click away. But be warned, once you start this story, you won't be able to stop. Because this isn't just a tale about a suitcase or a billionaire. It's a story about love, fate, and the power of second chances. And by the time we're done, you'll be left with one burning question. What would you do if you were in Emma's shoes? The answer might surprise you. So let's dive in and find out together. But here's the cliffhanger. Just when Emma thinks she's figured out the truth, she discovers something that changes everything. Something that makes her question everything she thought she knew about Alexander and about herself. What is it? Well, you'll have to keep watching to find out. Because this story is far from over, and the best is yet to come. So, stay tuned, and let's uncover the mystery together. This introduction is designed to captivate your audience from the very first second, using psychological hooks, relatable themes, and a sense of mystery to keep them engaged. By addressing the viewer directly and creating a personal connection, you'll make them feel invested in the story and eager to see it through to the end. The cliffhanger ensures they'll be excited to watch the next part, making this a masterful way to retain viewers and keep them coming back for more. Emma's life had always been predictable, almost to the point of monotony. She lived in a small apartment in the heart of the city, worked as a graphic designer for a mid-sized advertising firm, and spent her evenings sketching in her notebook or catching up with her best friend, Claire. But that all changed the moment she opened the wrong suitcase. At first, she thought it was a simple mistake, something she could fix with a quick trip back to the airport. But as she sifted through the contents, custom-tailored suits, a gold-plated watch, and that mysterious leather journal, she realized this was no ordinary luggage. The journal, in particular, caught her attention. Its pages were filled with cryptic notes, sketches of what looked like blueprints, and a series of dates and locations that made no sense to her. Who was this Alexander Grant, and why did his belongings feel like a puzzle waiting to be solved? Meanwhile, Alexander was in a state of panic. The suitcase wasn't just a collection of expensive items. It was a carefully curated set of clues tied to a secret he had spent years protecting. The journal contained details about a business deal gone wrong, one that had left him with enemies who would stop at nothing to see him fall. And now, that journal was in the hands of a stranger. He had to find it and her before anyone else did. But as he tracked Emma down, he wasn't prepared for the woman he would meet. She wasn't just some random person who had stumbled upon his life. She was kind, curious, and disarmingly genuine. And for the first time in years, Alexander felt something he thought he'd buried long ago: hope. As the two of them began to unravel the mystery of the suitcase, they found themselves drawn into a web of intrigue that went far beyond what either of them could have imagined. The blueprints in the journal turned out to be plans for a high-tech security system, one that had been stolen from Alexander's company by a rival firm. The dates and locations were linked to a series of clandestine meetings, each one bringing them closer to uncovering a conspiracy that threatened not just Alexander's business, but his life. But the more they dug, the more questions they uncovered. Who was behind the theft? Why were they targeting Alexander? And what did Emma have to do with it all? Emma, for her part, was both fascinated and terrified by the world she had been thrust into. She had always been a dreamer, someone who longed for adventure, but this was more than she had bargained for. Yet, despite the danger, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. There was something about Alexander, his vulnerability, his determination, the way he looked at her like she was the only person who truly understood him, that made her want to stay. But as their connection deepened, so did the stakes. Someone was watching them, someone who didn't want the truth to come out. And when Emma started receiving anonymous messages warning her to stay out of Alexander's life, she realized that this wasn't just about a suitcase anymore. It was about survival. Claire, Emma's best friend, added another layer to the story. She was the voice of reason, the one who urged Emma to be careful, to think twice before getting involved with a man like Alexander. But even Claire couldn't deny the chemistry between them. "Just promise me you'll be careful," she told Emma one evening over coffee. "People like him, they don't live in the same world as us. And sometimes, that world can be dangerous." Emma nodded, but deep down, she knew it was too late. She was already in too deep. Alexander's world, meanwhile, was crumbling around him. The rival firm was closing in, using every dirty trick in the book to bring him down. His board of directors was growing restless, demanding answers he couldn't give. And then there was Emma. She was a distraction, yes, but also a lifeline. With her by his side, he felt like he could face anything. But he also knew that putting her in danger was the last thing he wanted. "You don't have to do this," he told her one night as they pored over the journal together. "I can handle it on my own." But Emma shook her head. "You don't have to do it alone," she said. "Not anymore." As the tension mounted, so did the stakes. The anonymous messages turned into threats, and then into acts of sabotage. Someone broke into Emma's apartment, leaving behind a chilling message: "Stay out of this, or else." Alexander's penthouse was vandalized, his security system hacked. It was clear that whoever was behind this wasn't playing games. But just when they thought they had a lead, it would slip through their fingers, leaving them with more questions than answers. And then there was the journal. The more they studied it, the more they realized it wasn't just about the stolen plans. It was a map, a guide to something much bigger. The dates and locations weren't just random. They were part of a larger pattern, one that pointed to a conspiracy that went beyond Alexander's company. But what was it? And who else was involved? The answers were hidden in the journal, but decoding it would take time they might not have. As the story unfolded, Emma and Alexander found themselves caught in a whirlwind of emotions. There were moments of tenderness when they would forget about the danger and just be together. But those moments were always fleeting, overshadowed by the ever-present threat lurking in the background. And through it all, one question loomed large: could they trust each other? Alexander had secrets, ones he wasn't ready to share. And Emma had doubts, ones she couldn't quite shake. But despite everything, they couldn't deny the connection between them. It was as if fate had brought them together for a reason, and now they had to see it through no matter the cost. But just when they thought they were getting closer to the truth, something happened that changed everything. A name surfaced in the journal, one that neither of them expected. It was someone from Alexander's past, someone he thought he had left behind. And as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, they realized that the conspiracy was bigger and more personal than they had ever imagined. So, what happens next? Who is behind the threats? And what does the journal really hold? The answers are closer than ever, but so is the danger. And as Emma and Alexander prepare to face their biggest challenge yet, one thing is clear: nothing will ever be the same. But will they make it out alive? That's the question that will keep you on the edge of your seat, and the answer is coming sooner than you think. So, stay tuned, because this story is far from over. The best and the worst is yet to come. The name in the journal was one Alexander hadn't seen or spoken in over a decade, Daniel Hartman. Once his closest friend and business partner, Daniel had betrayed him in the worst possible way, leaving Alexander to pick up the pieces of a shattered company and a broken trust. The betrayal had been so deep that Alexander had cut all ties, vowing never to let Daniel back into his life. But now, Daniel's name was staring back at him from the pages of the journal, intertwined with the very conspiracy that was threatening to destroy everything Alexander had built. The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. Was Daniel behind all of this? Was this his way of getting revenge? Or was there something more sinister at play? Emma could see the turmoil in Alexander's eyes as he processed the information. She didn't know the full history between the two men, but she could sense the weight of it. "Who is he?" she asked gently, placing a hand on his arm. Alexander hesitated, his jaw tightening as he struggled to find the words. "Someone I thought I'd never have to deal with again," he finally said, his voice low and strained. "But if he's involved in this, it's worse than I thought." Emma's mind raced. If Daniel was as dangerous as Alexander made him out to be, then they were in deeper trouble than they realized. But there was no turning back now. They had to see this through, no matter how dangerous it got. As they dug deeper, the pieces of the puzzle began to form a clearer, more terrifying picture. The blueprints in the journal weren't just for a security system. They were part of a larger plan, one that involved manipulating global markets and destabilizing entire industries. The dates and locations were tied to a series of high-stakes meetings, each one bringing them closer to uncovering a network of powerful individuals who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. And at the center of it all was Daniel Hartman. But what was his endgame? And why had he resurfaced now, after all these years? The threats against Emma and Alexander escalated, becoming more personal and more violent. One night, as they were leaving a cafe, a car sped toward them, narrowly missing Emma as Alexander pulled her out of the way. The driver disappeared into the night, leaving behind only the sound of screeching tires and the smell of burnt rubber. Emma's hands trembled as she clung to Alexander, her heart pounding in her chest. "They're not just trying to scare us anymore," she whispered. "They're trying to hurt us." Alexander's expression was grim as he held her close. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said, his voice firm. But even as he spoke the words, he couldn't shake the fear that he might not be able to keep that promise. Meanwhile, Claire's concern for Emma grew with each passing day. She had always been the cautious one, the one who thought things through before acting. But even she could see that Emma was in over her head. "You need to be careful," Claire warned her one evening, her voice tinged with worry. "This isn't just some romantic adventure anymore. This is real life, and real life can be dangerous." Emma nodded, but her resolve didn't waver. She knew the risks, but she also knew that she couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when they were so close to uncovering the truth. Alexander, too, was grappling with his own fears. He had always been a man in control, someone who could handle anything life threw at him. But this was different. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Emma. And the thought of something happening to her was more than he could bear. He found himself torn between his desire to protect her and his need to uncover the truth. But as the threats grew more intense, he realized that he couldn't do both. He would have to make a choice, and soon. The unexpected twist came one rainy evening as they were going through the journal one last time. Hidden in the spine of the book was a small, folded piece of paper that had gone unnoticed until now. On it was a single sentence: "The truth lies where it all began." Alexander's breath caught as he read the words. He knew exactly what it meant. The place where it all began, the place where he and Daniel had started their company, where their friendship had flourished before it had fallen apart. It was an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place he hadn't set foot in since the day he walked away from Daniel. Emma could see the conflict in Alexander's eyes as he stared at the note. "We have to go there," she said softly. "It's the only way to end this." Alexander nodded, but his mind was racing. Going back to that place meant confronting memories he had tried to bury, facing a past he had worked so hard to forget. But he also knew that Emma was right. If they wanted answers, they would have to go to the source. As they prepared to leave, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. But there was no other choice. The stakes were too high, the danger too real. And as they drove through the rain-soaked streets toward the warehouse, the tension between them was palpable. They were so close to the truth, but they were also closer to the danger than ever before. When they arrived at the warehouse, it was exactly as Alexander remembered it: old, abandoned, and eerily silent. But as they stepped inside, they realized they weren't alone. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty space, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Daniel Hartman, but he wasn't the man Alexander remembered. He looked older, more worn, and there was a desperation in his eyes that Alexander had never seen before. "I've been waiting for you," Daniel said, his voice trembling. "But you're too late." The words sent a chill down Emma's spine. Too late for what? What had they walked into? And as Daniel stepped closer, the truth began to unravel in ways neither of them could have anticipated. But before they could process it, the sound of sirens filled the air, and the warehouse was suddenly flooded with light. They were surrounded, but by whom? And what did they want? The stakes had never been higher, and the danger had never been more real. As Emma and Alexander stood there, caught in the crossfire of a conspiracy that went far beyond what they had imagined, one thing was clear: this was just the beginning. The truth was closer than ever, but so was the danger. And as the story hurtled toward its climax, the only question that remained was, would they make it out alive? The answer was coming, but not without a fight. So stay tuned, because the best and the worst is yet to come. The warehouse was a whirlwind of chaos. The blinding lights from the police cars outside cast long shadows across the room, and the sound of shouting. Officers echoed through the empty space. Emma's heart raced as she clutched Alexander's arm, her eyes darting between Daniel and the armed figures now surrounding them. Daniel looked just as shocked as they were, his face pale and his hands raised in surrender. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the commotion. Alexander's mind was racing. What had Daniel gotten himself into? And why had he lured them here, only to be caught in the same trap? Before anyone could react, a voice cut through the noise, a voice that sent a chill down Alexander's spine. It was Victor Kane, the CEO of the rival firm that had been trying to destroy him. Victor stepped into the light, a smug smile on his face as he surveyed the scene. "Well, well, well," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Looks like the gang's all here." Alexander's fists clenched at his sides as he stepped forward, shielding Emma behind him. "What do you want, Victor?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside him. Victor's smile widened. "What do I want? I want what's mine. The blueprints, the journal, and the satisfaction of watching you lose everything." Emma's mind raced as she tried to piece together what was happening. Victor's involvement explained the threats, the sabotage, and the relentless pursuit. But what about Daniel? Why was he here? As if reading her thoughts, Daniel spoke up, his voice trembling with desperation. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said, his eyes pleading with Alexander. "Victor blackmailed me. He threatened my family. I had no choice but to help him. But I couldn't go through with it. That's why I left the journal for you to find. I thought you could stop him." The revelation hit Alexander like a ton of bricks. All this time, he had thought Daniel was the enemy, but the truth was far more complicated. Daniel had been a pawn in Victor's game, just like the rest of them. And now, they were all trapped in a dangerous standoff with no easy way out. Victor, however, seemed to be enjoying every moment of it. "Enough with the heartfelt confessions," he sneered. "Hand over the journal, and maybe I'll let you walk out of here." Alexander knew better than to trust Victor. He also knew that the journal was their only leverage. But before he could respond, Emma stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "You don't get it, do you?" she said, her eyes locked on Victor. "This isn't just about the journal or the blueprints. This is about people's lives. And you've already lost." Victor's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered, his expression hardening. "Brave words for someone in your position," he said, his voice cold. "But we'll see how brave you are when the handcuffs come out." Just as the tension reached its peak, a new voice broke through the chaos. "That's enough, Victor." Everyone turned to see a group of federal agents entering the warehouse, their guns drawn and their badges gleaming in the light. At the front of the group was Agent Morales, a woman Alexander had met briefly during his own investigation into Victor's activities. "We've been tracking you for months," she said, her voice firm. "It's over." Victor's face turned ashen as he realized the game was up. He tried to protest, but the agents quickly moved in, cuffing him and reading him his rights. As Victor was led away, the warehouse fell into an eerie silence. Emma let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, her legs suddenly feeling like jelly. Alexander turned to her, his eyes filled with a mix of relief and gratitude. "You were amazing," he said, his voice soft but full of emotion. Emma managed a small smile, though her mind was still reeling from everything that had happened. "I just did what I had to do," she replied. Daniel, meanwhile, was being questioned by the agents. He looked exhausted. His shoulders slumped as he recounted everything he knew about Victor's operations. Alexander watched him for a moment, a flood of conflicting emotions washing over him. Despite everything, he couldn't bring himself to hate Daniel. The man had made mistakes, yes, but he had also tried to make things right in the end. As the agents led Daniel away, Alexander caught his eye and gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the complicated history they shared. With Victor and Daniel in custody, the immediate danger was over. But the aftermath was far from simple. The revelations about Victor's conspiracy sent shockwaves through the business world, and Alexander found himself at the center of a media storm. Reporters hounded him for comments, and his company's stock prices fluctuated wildly as investors tried to make sense of the scandal. Through it all, Emma was by his side, offering support and helping him navigate the chaos. As the days turned into weeks, life began to settle into a new normal. Alexander worked tirelessly to rebuild his company's reputation, while Emma returned to her job, though her life was forever changed by the events that had unfolded. Their relationship, forged in the fire of danger and uncertainty, grew stronger with each passing day. They had been through so much together, and it had brought them closer in ways neither of them could have predicted. But just when they thought the story was over, an unexpected twist emerged. One evening, as they were going through the journal one last time, they discovered a hidden compartment they had missed before. Inside was a small USB drive containing files that revealed even more about Victor's operations information that could bring down other powerful figures involved in the conspiracy. It was a final piece of the puzzle, one that would ensure Victor and his associates could never hurt anyone again. As they handed the USB drive over to Agent Morales, Emma and Alexander couldn't help but reflect on everything they had been through. It had been a journey filled with danger, mystery, and unexpected love, a journey that had changed their lives forever. And as they stood together looking out at the city skyline, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The story of the wrong suitcase had come full circle, but it was so much more than a tale of mistaken identity. It was a story about trust, resilience, and the power of love to overcome even the darkest of circumstances. And as the credits rolled on their extraordinary journey, one thing was clear: sometimes, the biggest moments in life come from the smallest mistakes. So what about you? What would you do if a simple mix-up turned your world upside down? The answer might surprise you. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, life's greatest adventures often begin with a single step into the unknown.